On April 17, 2016, 28-year-old American researcher Martin Lawson disappeared while traveling across the Sahara Desert in southern Algeria. He had been documenting ancient trade routes for his doctoral dissertation. His abandoned Land Rover was found 3 days later near the oasis town of Janet, with his passport, research equipment, and supplies still inside. The search lasted 6 weeks before being called off. 9 years later, on June 12, 2025, a freight train operator spotted a man standing motionless beside the tracks of the Trans-Saharan Railway, 127 kilometers north of Tamanrasset. The man was severely malnourished, his skin deeply weathered, wearing clothes that didn't belong to him. When railway security approached, he identified himself as Martin Lawson. His first words, "The tracks weren't here before." But what happened during those 9 missing years, and who had kept him? You will find out in this video. Martin Lawson worked as a research assistant at the University of Chicago's Department of Anthropology. His dissertation focused on historical Saharan trade networks. On April 10, 2016, Lawson entered Algeria through the border crossing at Tinzouatine, according to immigration records. Security camera footage shows him purchasing supplies in Tamanrasset on April 12th: water containers, preserved food, and additional fuel canisters. The clerk remembered Lawson explaining he planned to document sections of ancient trade routes that connected sub-Saharan Africa with Mediterranean ports. On April 15th, Lawson sent an email to his academic advisor from an internet cafe in Janet. The message, recovered later from the server logs, read, "Making good progress. Found markings consistent with 15th century caravan paths. Planning to head southeast tomorrow to document a promising site. Should have signal again in 3-4 days." Cell tower data confirmed his phone last pinged near Janet at 8:42 a.m. on April 16th. The following day, he posted a GPS coordinate to a research database from his satellite phone. This would be his final communication. On April 20th, Lawson's advisor reported him missing after he failed to check in as scheduled. The Algerian authorities initiated a search, beginning at his last known coordinates. On April 21st, local police located Lawson's white Land Rover Defender, registration number UK477DZ, abandoned approximately 73 kilometers southeast of Janet. The vehicle contained Lawson's passport, research equipment, clothing, and nearly full water containers. The keys were in the ignition. There were no signs of violence or struggle. The doors were unlocked. The vehicle had not experienced mechanical failure. The search operation expanded to cover a 50-kilometer radius around the abandoned vehicle. The Algerian military deployed helicopter reconnaissance and ground search teams. Tuareg guides familiar with the region joined the effort. Search dogs attempted to establish a scent trail but lost it approximately 300 meters from the vehicle. The area showed no footprints or disturbances in the sand and rock terrain that would indicate direction of travel. "The wind had likely erased any tracks," stated the official report. "The absence of footwear at the vehicle suggests the subject did not plan to travel far on foot." The search teams found a single anomaly: Lawson's satellite phone, discovered 1.2 kilometers northeast of the vehicle, partially buried in sand. The device showed no damage, but its battery had been removed. The memory card was still inserted, but forensic analysis revealed that all data had been professionally wiped. "This is inconsistent with animal activity or environmental damage," noted the technical report. The data removal required specific knowledge of the device. After 6 weeks with no further evidence, the active search was suspended on June 1, 2016. The case remained open but inactive. The official report concluded, the subject likely became disoriented and perished in the desert environment. The absence of remains is consistent with cases where predation and environmental factors have eliminated recoverable evidence. Lawson's family rejected this conclusion and continued to fund private searches over the following 3 years, all of which proved unsuccessful. The case gradually faded from media attention, joining thousands of other missing persons cases with presumed but unconfirmed deaths. 9 years passed. On June 12, 2025, at approximately 14:37, train operator Ahmed Benali was guiding a freight transport along the Trans-Saharan Railway, 127 kilometers north of Tamanrasset. The railway, completed in 2023, connected Algeria's southern regions with its Mediterranean ports. Through the cabin window, Benali observed a male figure standing motionless beside the tracks. "He was just standing there completely still," Benali stated in his report, "like he was waiting for something. But we don't stop at that location. There is no station there." Benali alerted railway security via radio. A response team arrived at the location at 16:05 and found the man still standing in the same position. The temperature at the time was recorded as 43 degrees, 109 degrees. The man appeared severely dehydrated and malnourished. His skin showed extreme sun damage and weathering. He wore clothing inconsistent with his apparent nationality, a traditional Tuareg blue robe, badly worn, and sandals made from tire rubber. He carried no identification or possessions. When approached, the man did not attempt to flee. Railway security officer Khalid Musa reported that the subject identified himself in English as Martin Lawson, American. According to the transcript, his next statement was, "The tracks weren't here before. I need to call the university." Security footage from the response team's vehicle shows the man struggling to maintain balance and exhibiting signs of severe dehydration. He was transported to Tamanrasset Regional Hospital, arriving at 17:20. The medical assessment documented a male subject approximately 37 perikimetictor, 37 years old, severely malnourished with a BMI of 16.7, indicating significant long-term malnutrition. The subject showed advanced skin damage consistent with prolonged sun exposure. The attending physician noted, "Scarring patterns on wrists and ankles indicate prolonged restraint with rope or similar material. These are not recent injuries, but show evidence of repeated trauma over extended periods." Additional findings included multiple healed fractures in the right hand and 3 ribs, dental deterioration consistent with nutritional deficiency, and unusual circular burn marks on the upper back. Hospital staff contacted Algerian authorities, who verified the subject's identity through fingerprint comparison with Lawson's passport records. The U.S. Embassy in Algiers was notified, and consular officials arrived in Tamanrasset on June 14th. DNA testing later confirmed the man's identity as Martin Lawson, the American researcher who had disappeared 9 years earlier. During initial questioning, Lawson provided what investigators would later determine was an incomplete and partially fabricated account of his disappearance. According to the interview transcript, Lawson claimed he had become lost after leaving his vehicle to examine what appeared to be ancient rock carvings. "I got disoriented," he stated. "A sandstorm came up suddenly. I couldn't find my way back to the Land Rover." Lawson claimed he had been taken in by a nomadic Tuareg family who found him unconscious from dehydration. "They saved my life," he stated. "I stayed with them. They moved constantly. There was never a way to contact anyone." When asked why he hadn't attempted to reach authorities in any of the towns or settlements the nomads would have encountered, Lawson became evasive. The transcript notes, "Subject looked away, exhibited increased respiration, and did not respond for 47 seconds. Lawson's initial account contained numerous inconsistencies that raised immediate concerns among investigators. Forensic analysis of his physical condition contradicted the nomadic survival story. Dr. Amina Bekouch, the examining physician, noted, "The scarring patterns are inconsistent with nomadic living. The restraint marks indicate prolonged captivity, not freedom of movement. The burn marks show deliberate application, not accidental injury." The circular burn patterns on Lawson's back were particularly concerning to investigators. The medical report described them as consistent with a heated metal rod or similar implement applied with consistent pressure and duration. When shown photographs of these injuries, Lawson became non-responsive. The transcript notes that he stared at the floor for several minutes before stating he did not wish to discuss how he received these marks. Lawson's linguistic capabilities also contradicted his story. Despite claiming to have lived with Tuareg nomads for 9 years, he displayed only rudimentary knowledge of Tamashek, the Tuareg language. Dr. Nabil Sharif, a linguistic analyst consulted by investigators, noted, "The subject's vocabulary is limited to basic commands and responses. This is inconsistent with immersive living among native speakers for the claimed duration. It suggests restricted communication, not cultural integration." As inconsistencies mounted, investigators began to consider alternative explanations for Lawson's 9-year absence. Chief Inspector Karim Boutelja of the Algerian National Police took charge of the case on June 18th. Boutelja had extensive experience with kidnapping cases in the region. His initial assessment, recorded in the case file, reads, "The physical evidence suggests captivity, not voluntary association with nomadic groups. The subject's reluctance to provide detailed accounts may indicate traumatic response or fear of reprisal." Boutelja's investigation soon focused on Lawson himself as a potential suspect. The possibility that Lawson had staged his own disappearance for personal or financial reasons required examination. Financial records showed no unusual activity in Lawson's accounts prior to or after his disappearance. His student loans remained unpaid, and he had not accessed any of his accounts during the 9-year period. His academic career had been promising but not exceptional, providing no obvious motive for fabricating a disappearance. "We must consider the possibility that the subject is withholding information to protect himself or others," Boutelja noted in his report. "The inconsistencies in his account may indicate involvement in illegal activities during the missing period." Investigators examined potential connections to smuggling operations, which are common in the border regions where Lawson disappeared. No evidence emerged connecting him to known networks. The breakthrough in the investigation came from an unexpected source. On June 23rd, Algerian border police arrested a man attempting to cross into Mali with falsified documents. The suspect, identified as Ibrahim Kader, 43, was found in possession of a notebook containing coordinates and dates. Among these was a location matching the site where Lawson's Land Rover had been discovered in 2016, along with the date of his disappearance. Under interrogation, Kader revealed he had worked as a courier for a group he referred to as the Collectors. According to the transcript, they take people sometimes. Not for money. They keep them. When pressed for details, Kader stated, "I only delivered messages and supplies. I never saw the places they keep them." The courier claimed he had left the organization 3 years earlier, but had maintained the notebook as insurance. Kader's information led investigators to focus on a previously unknown operation in the region. According to his testimony, the Collectors were not affiliated with known terrorist groups or criminal networks. They operated independently, targeting specific individuals who ventured into remote areas. "They watch for people studying the old things, the old routes," Kader stated. "They have been doing this for many years." Armed with this new information, investigators returned to Lawson with evidence of the organization's existence. The approach changed the dynamic of the interviews dramatically. According to the transcript, when shown Kader's notebook, Lawson physically recoiled and began trembling. "You don't understand," he said. "They're still watching. They're always watching." For the first time, Lawson confirmed he had been held captive rather than living with nomads. "They took me from my car," he stated. 3 men. They had been following me for 2 days. The transcript notes that Lawson spoke in short, fragmented sentences, often pausing for long periods between statements. "They put something over my head. I woke up somewhere else. Underground, I think. Over several interview sessions, a more complete picture emerged of Lawson's 9-year captivity. He described being held in a series of locations, primarily underground structures built into rock formations in remote areas. There were others, he stated. I didn't always see them. Sometimes I heard them. Sometimes they were taken away and didn't come back. Lawson's captors, whom he knew only by the title collectors, appeared to be an organized group dedicated to acquiring both artifacts and knowledge related to ancient Saharan civilizations and trade routes. According to Lawson, they maintained multiple containment facilities throughout the region, moving captives periodically to avoid detection. They wanted my research, Lawson explained during his 4th interview session. They took my notes, made me identify locations, explain findings. When asked why they had kept him for so long, Lawson responded, "They said I belonged to their collection now, that I was valuable. They don't release valuable things." The psychological control mechanisms employed by the group became apparent as Lawson's testimony continued. They had rules, he stated. If you followed the rules, you were treated better. If you broke them. The transcript notes that Lawson indicated the burn marks on his back without completing the sentence. One significant detail emerged regarding the group's operations. They were building something, Lawson stated. They made us help. Digging, moving stones. Some kind of structure, but we never saw the complete design. We only worked on pieces. When pressed for the purpose of this construction, Lawson could only offer, they said it was the revelation, that they were reconstructing something ancient that had been lost. The investigation expanded based on Lawson's testimony. Satellite imagery analysis identified several potential locations matching his descriptions. On July 7, 2025, Algerian Special Forces conducted coordinated raids on 3 sites in remote areas near the borders with Mali and Niger. 2 of the locations showed evidence of recent abandonment. The 3rd site, located in a network of caves approximately 210 kilometers west of Tamanrasset, yielded significant findings. According to the official report, the location contained underground chambers modified for human containment. Evidence suggests multiple individuals were held at this facility. Documentation recovered includes detailed records of at least 7 captives, including Lawson. The site also contained research materials, including some of Lawson's original notes from 2016, along with extensive archaeological records dating back several decades. The raid recovered over 300 artifacts, many of which had been stolen from archaeological sites across the Sahara. Carbon dating later confirmed that some items dated to the 9th century. Other materials suggested the group had been operating since at least the 1970s, systematically collecting both artifacts and researchers who studied them. The most disturbing discovery was a room containing detailed personal files on potential targets, researchers, archaeologists, and explorers who had worked in the region. Many of the individuals in these files had been reported missing over the previous 30 years. Photographs and surveillance notes indicated long-term monitoring of these individuals before their disappearances. Ibrahim Kader identified one of the abandoned locations as a facility where he had delivered supplies. They always changed the delivery points, he stated. They never let anyone see where they actually kept people. Kader's testimony suggested the operation was larger than the 3 discovered sites, with potential connections to antiquities, trafficking networks across North Africa. As the investigation expanded, Lawson's psychological state deteriorated. Hospital records note increasing anxiety and paranoia following the raids. The subject expresses conviction that he is still being monitored, the attending psychiatrist reported. He believes the collectors will reclaim him due to his value to their operation. This fear appeared justified on July 14th, when hospital security discovered an unauthorized individual attempting to access Lawson's room during night shift. The intruder escaped before apprehension, but surveillance footage showed a man in hospital staff clothing who could not be identified as an employee. The incident prompted Lawson's immediate transfer to a secure facility in Algiers under diplomatic protection. During transit, Lawson experienced a severe panic attack when the convoy passed near railway tracks. The medical report notes, the subject became agitated at the sight of the railway, repeating, "The tracks weren't here before," multiple times. This response led investigators to reconsider the significance of where Lawson had been found, standing beside the recently constructed Trans-Saharan Railway. In a subsequent interview, Lawson provided context for this reaction. "They told us about the railway," he stated, "that it would cross their territory, their sacred sites. They were angry about it." According to Lawson, the construction of the railway had disrupted the group's operations, forcing them to abandon several facilities. They said it was desecration, that the railway violated something ancient beneath the sand. The most significant breakthrough came on July 20th, when Algerian forces, acting on information from the raided sites, intercepted a vehicle near the Libyan border. The driver, identified as Moussa Diallo, 57, attempted to destroy documents before his arrest. Among the recovered materials was a list of names that included Martin Lawson, along with notations in a coded system. Diallo's identity proved crucial to the investigation. Fingerprint analysis matched records from a 1989 archaeological permit application. Diallo had once been a legitimate archaeologist specializing in pre-Islamic Saharan civilizations, before disappearing from academic records in the early 1990s. The arrest report notes that when confronted with this information, the subject smiled and stated that he had found a more direct path to knowledge. Under interrogation, Diallo provided limited but valuable information about the organization. "We are not collectors in your sense," he stated. "We are preservers of knowledge that should not be corrupted by your universities and museums." Diallo confirmed the group had been operating for decades, targeting researchers who ventured into what they considered protected territories. Diallo's testimony revealed the ideological foundation of the group. They believed they were descendants and guardians of an ancient civilization that had once controlled trade across the Sahara. "Your historians have erased our true past," he stated. "We reclaim what belongs to us, including those who study our legacy without permission." When questioned about Lawson specifically, Diallo exhibited recognition but limited concern. "The American was unremarkable," he stated, "adequately compliant after initial resistance. His research was useful, but ultimately flawed." Asked why Lawson had been released after 9 years, Diallo responded, "He was not released. He escaped during relocation, an oversight that has been addressed." This statement contradicted Lawson's account of being abandoned beside the railway tracks. When confronted with this discrepancy, Lawson became agitated. "I didn't escape," he insisted. "They left me there. They said the tracks were built on a boundary line, that leaving me there was a message of some kind." The transcript notes that Lawson could not elaborate further on the significance of this location. Forensic analysis of materials recovered from the raided facilities provided additional context. Documents described the Trans-Saharan Railway as crossing 17 sacred boundaries that had traditionally been unmarked except in the group's private records. One recovered map showed these boundary lines with a notation: "Violations require responses." As the investigation continued, the extent of the organization's reach became apparent. Financial records indicated connections to antiquities dealers in Europe and Asia, suggesting the group funded its operations through the strategic sale of less significant artifacts while retaining those they deemed most valuable. The files contained records of at least 23 researchers who had been acquired since 1975, with varying notations about their retention duration and knowledge extraction. Lawson's medical and psychological assessment proceeded in parallel with the criminal investigation. The detailed examination revealed the full extent of his physical trauma. In addition to the previously documented injuries, medical imaging showed evidence of healed fractures, consistent with systematic physical punishment. Nutritional analysis indicated long-term protein deficiency and vitamin D levels, suggesting minimal sun exposure for extended periods. Psychologically, Lawson exhibited complex trauma responses typical of long-term captivity. The psychiatric report notes, the subject demonstrates pronounced hypervigilance, dissociative episodes, and adaptive behaviors consistent with prolonged psychological control. He continues to follow routines and behavioral patterns established during captivity, including asking permission before basic activities such as eating or speaking. One particular behavior noted by medical staff was Lawson's insistence on facing north when sleeping. When questioned about this, he responded, "They always positioned us toward Mecca, not for religious reasons. They said it aligned us with something older underneath." This statement corresponded with references in the recovered documents to subterranean alignment networks that the group believed existed beneath the Sahara. On August 3rd, based on information from Diallo and the recovered documents, a joint operation by Algerian, Malian, and Niger security forces targeted what was believed to be the organization's primary facility. The location, a remote compound built into a mountain range near the convergence of the three countries' borders, had been disguised as an abandoned mining operation. The raid resulted in the arrest of 11 individuals and the recovery of extensive archaeological materials. Most significantly, 3 captives were liberated from underground chambers: a French geologist who had disappeared in 2018, a British documentary filmmaker missing since 2021, and a German archaeologist who had been presumed dead after vanishing in 2014. All showed physical and psychological trauma consistent with Lawson's condition. The facility contained elaborate underground structures that extended deep into the mountain. The official report describes multiple levels of excavation, some appearing decades old, containing both living quarters for the organization's members and containment areas. For captives, the deeper chambers housed what appeared to be a museum or archive of artifacts, organized according to an unknown classification system. Of particular note was a chamber containing what the report describes as a partial reconstruction of a structure using ancient and modern materials. Engineering analysis suggested this construction had been ongoing for years, with captives providing labor. The purpose remained unclear, though recovered documents referred to it as the alignment mechanism and indicated it was nearing completion. Diallo, when informed of the raid, showed little reaction. "There are always more sacred spaces than profane eyes to find them," he stated. "What you have found is just one face of something much older and more patient than your investigation." Pressed for clarification, he responded, "The railway was your choice. Every action has consequences that emerge in their own time." This cryptic statement gained context when, 2 weeks later, a maintenance inspection discovered structural issues affecting a 30-kilometer section of the Trans-Saharan Railway. Engineering assessment revealed subtle sabotage that would have eventually led to track failure. The methods used matched techniques described in documents recovered from the raided facilities. For Lawson, these developments brought limited psychological relief. The liberation of other captives confirmed his account and removed any remaining suspicion that he had fabricated his experience. However, his recovery process showed minimal progress. The psychiatric assessment from September 2025 notes, despite confirmation of his account and the disruption of the organization that held him, the subject continues to exhibit severe trust issues and conviction that he remains under surveillance. During a supervised visit with his family, Lawson demonstrated the extent of his psychological conditioning. The transcript notes that he introduced himself to his parents as Item 37L, the designation he had been assigned during captivity. When his mother attempted to hug him, he stepped back and stated, "Physical contact requires authorization from the archive manager." It took several minutes of reorientation from his therapist before he recognized his parents. The most revealing insight into Lawson's experience came during a specialized trauma interview conducted with the presence of other rescued captives. In this group setting, Lawson spoke more freely about the organization's practices. "They didn't see us as people," he explained. "We were knowledge containers. They extracted information, then kept us cataloged like the artifacts." This description matched accounts from the other survivors, who confirmed the organization's methodical approach to both archaeological materials and human captives. As the criminal case proceeded, the full structure of the organization emerged. Founded sometime in the 1960s by a splinter group of archaeologists who had developed unconventional theories about Saharan history, the Collectors had evolved into a quasi-religious organization dedicated to reconstructing what they believed was an ancient power structure beneath the desert. They viewed modern borders, academic institutions, and infrastructure projects as violations of sacred boundaries only they could perceive. The group's leader, identified through recovered documents as Dr. Ahmed Bazi, remained at large. Historical records showed Bazi had been a respected archaeologist specializing in trans-Saharan trade networks before disappearing in 1972. The recovered materials indicated he had established the organization based on discoveries he had made that mainstream archaeology had rejected. Photographs recovered from the main facility showed an elderly man presumed to be Bazi, overseeing what the documents called the Alignment Project. On October 17, 2025, Interpol issued a global alert for Bazi, who was believed to have fled to Libya or Egypt. The alert noted, "Subject should be considered dangerous and potentially connected to extensive network of sympathizers. His organization has demonstrated sophisticated evasion capabilities and long-term operational planning." For Lawson and the other survivors, the continuing investigation provided incomplete closure. Medical and psychological recovery progressed slowly, with each showing different manifestations of their trauma. The German archaeologist, who had been held the longest at 11 years, experienced the most difficulty reintegrating. The medical report notes, "Subject continues to organize personal possessions according to the classification system used by captors, becoming distressed when items are rearranged." The French geologist demonstrated somewhat better adjustment but refused to sleep in rooms without window coverings. "I need to see the stars to orient myself," she explained to medical staff. "Otherwise, I don't know if I'm still underground." This statement aligned with Lawson's account of being kept in chambers where artificial light was manipulated to disrupt time perception. The British filmmaker exhibited the most severe physical trauma, with extensive scarring suggesting he had attempted escape multiple times. His psychological assessment notes, "Subject demonstrates complex relationship with captors, alternating between expressing fear and reciting their teachings about sacred boundaries and alignment knowledge as if they hold validity." This pattern of partial identification with captors' belief systems appeared to varying degrees in all survivors. As of December 2025, the investigation continues. 17 individuals associated with the Collectors have been arrested in 6 countries, but key leaders, including Bazi, remain at large. Archaeological authorities are still cataloging and analyzing the thousands of artifacts recovered, many of which appear to have been stolen from museums and excavation sites across North Africa over 5 decades. For Martin Lawson, the journey back from 9 years of captivity proceeds in small steps. He has been repatriated to the United States under an assumed identity for his protection, as investigators believe the organization maintains surveillance capabilities and has demonstrated willingness to recapture escaped collection items. The medical file notes that Lawson continues to experience severe anxiety when hearing train sounds. "The tracks weren't there before" remains a phrase he repeats during dissociative episodes. His therapist's notes indicate, "The railway represents for him both the disruption that led to his freedom and a boundary violation that the organization considered significant enough to leave him positioned at that specific location. During his most recent evaluation, when asked about his future plans, Lawson provided a response that his doctors considered significant progress. "I want to see open spaces, but not deserts. Never deserts again." The medical report notes, "For the first time, subject expressed a preference, without seeking permission first. This represents a small but meaningful step in his recovery process." The case file remains open. The search for Bazi and other organization leaders continues across multiple jurisdictions. Archaeological authorities have established new security protocols for researchers working in the region, though some remote areas have been classified as too dangerous for exploration pending the complete dismantling of the organization's network. The Trans-Saharan Railway continues to operate, though with enhanced security measures and regular structural inspections. Engineers have identified and neutralized 3 additional instances of subtle sabotage along the route, suggesting the organization's response to this boundary violation remains active despite the disruption of their primary facilities. For those who encountered Lawson standing beside the tracks after 9 years of captivity, the image remains disturbing. The railway security officer who first approached him, Khalid Musa, provided perhaps the most telling observation in his statement. He wasn't trying to flag down the train. He wasn't trying to escape or get help. He was just standing there, perfectly still, like he had been positioned, like an object placed deliberately for someone to find.